Hey, hi. It's getting close to the end of the line for my Young Zendo. This is number 332. Uh, and I don't know if I finish on the 18th or not because we're going to go on a camping trip next Tuesday. So maybe I'll wrap it up by then. But we have guests coming in, Wellington and Claire, and guests are coming in for the weekend. So who knows how much time I'll have to finish. I'd like to finish by the 18th, but you know, the best laid plans of mice and men. And I'm really bundled up today because this is about as cold as it gets in Taiwan. So I'm bundled. And the cold as it gets is not really that cold. Not cold at all. There's certainly no threat of snow on the sea level anyway. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about non-duality. Actually, you got to talk about duality before you can reach non, right? I wish there was a word for one duality. Unity, I guess. But we're always most of us are in the throes of a dualistic world. Us and them. Outside, inside, up, down, black, white, good, bad. Yeah, and this is all illusory, and I've talked about too many times to rehash it here. But I'll just make sure. Okay, yeah, to rehash it here. Not necessary. But I ran across this really nice little saying that was succinct, and I used it for video number 332. According to my counts, the way I go is I went 111 plus, and then 111 plus plus. I don't know why, I liked it. Because 111, 111, and 111. So this is 110 plus plus. And the title for today is Be One to Be and Two to See. Be one to be and two to see. So seeing implies that there's a seer and the seen, which is dualism, right? But we talk about oneness. Be one to be one and two to see. I'm going to read something that I found that I kind of like, and a couple of different things. I start off today by reading them. And it's interesting because they said to be be one to be. Okay, and it's interesting because here I'm going to talk about something, and just an example how people use seeing, and I use seeing all the time. So, spiritual awakening is the clearer seeing of the true nature of the self. Now that's true because the true nature of the self, seeing the true nature of the self, it's the clear seeing, is the oneness. Along with this, there is, in most cases, a kind of initiation, which is to encounter with the void and the fear and sometimes terror that this momentarily brings. I've addressed this in the past. It feels as if you will, it feels as if you will be completely annihilated, and yes, you will. It does. You have to be courageous to inwardly take the step into nothingness, no thingness. Courage. In this respect, You have to be prepared to give your life and to deeply trust. Although when this happens, there tends to be no thought, but just the overwhelming feeling of fear that shakes and rattles you inwardly. No matter how overwhelming it might feel, it is something to pass through. Just passing through, all things are. There is some greater intelligence within that, in a way, carries you through. There usually follows a process of purification and learning to live in a new way, as well as an ever-deepening understanding of the teachings and in the meaning of surrender. There's that word again, surrender. So what are we talking about? No matter how overwhelmed I might feel, it's something to pass through. We're talking about, in my case, it was the leap into the unknown, off the cliff, off the abyss. After my teacher told me, just jump, turned his back and walked away. And that was it. That was the end of my relationship with my teacher, as it should be, as it's meant to be, as it's intended to be. So that's you prepare to give your life and to deeply trust. Yes, although when this happens, there tends to be no thought. Indeed, I just leapt. I jumped off the precipice, jumped off the abyss into the dark unknown. But it's something just to pass through. There is some greater intelligence within that in a way carries you through. Indeed. And usually follows a process of purification and how to live in a new way, as well as our deepening understanding of the teachings and the meanings of surrender. Well, everything comes back to surrender. If there's ever a key word that I would come back to again and again, is surrender. And it's a continual act. It's the gerund form, surrendering. Continuous surrendering is necessary in life before pre-abiding, non-abiding awakening, but it's pre and non-abiding awakening, and then abiding awakening. The one constant is this surrendering, this continual act of surrendering to power greater than your own, surrendering to the unknown, surrendering to the unknowable, surrendering any hopes of knowing much of anything at all, as far as that goes. Okay. This process can take some time. Yes, in my case, it took some time, as well as an ever-deepening understanding of the teachings and the meaning of surrender. I said all that already. This process can take some time, often years, depending on various factors. I'm repeating myself because I'm squinting to read. Even though what you truly are is always here, now, as the timeless dimension of being. The completion of this process is what I would term enlightenment. You are then living from and as what you have seen yourself to be. The thinking, discursive mind is predominantly still and quiet. You can still use your mind to think if you need to. I love it. Anytime during and following the process of awakening, the ego can try to reassert itself. So ongoing meditation practice is still required to reaffirm your position of awareness. I feel that even though there may be completion and enlightenment, as our true nature is eternal, there is still the possibility of an ever unfolding limitless potential. Well, it's much more for me than possibility. It's a probability. Okay? So, it's interesting. I'm talking about be one to be. And then it starts talking about, and two to see. And my quote started off with seeing, but seeing it with the third eye, the inner sense. Okay, so let's go take back recently I read somewhere that she said, the lady said that fear always exists, and that you learn to be a spectator, you learn to be a witness of the fear. But it's a fundamental, according to her, it's a fundamental part of our makeup, is that fear is a constant. And I want to say that in my experience, before I prepared to jump off the abyss, once I faced the death of my ego, I was indeed fearless. The fear of death was the only thing that remained, and I just cleaned it out. I said, we're eternal. I'm living forever. It's just energy. Is only energy, and it only expresses itself in a different way. So I'll be around as energy. Can't be anything else, but maybe expressed in a different manifestation. For sure, expressed in a different way. Now, somebody asked, here's the question, could fear be ended completely? Well, I'm sure in my experience with you, to counteract, that's why it's good to read everything that people say out there, but your own experiences may differ. And this is where I'm sitting in front of you as a fearless. I have no fears. So the question is pretty appropriate. Someone else is addressing what, for me, I know is so for me. Can fear be ended completely? Okay. And the first answer is yes. Namaste. Yes. Emotions are caused by thinking. Genuine happiness is the absence of disturbing thoughts and consequently of emotional reactions. So our thoughts stir up our emotions. Isn't it the distress we feel during a critical incident caused by the incident, not by thinking? We don't even have time to think of then. So isn't it the distress we feel during a critical incident caused by the incident? Getting run over by a bus, watching someone die that's dear to you, getting diagnosed with cancer. We don't have time to think then, okay? People in extreme situations don't feel pain, don't fear or pain, don't feel fear or pain like we think. The body produces adrenaline, a natural painkiller. Their brains produce endorphins, relieving fatigue and anxiety. There's an additional phenomenon that is not well understood. People in extreme situations also often feel as though they're outside their body looking on. So if you're in this calamity, this extreme conditions, adrenaline, you don't feel pain. During the incident, you don't feel pain or fear. And there's this separation that because you've learned that not to identify that the self is indestructible, the self is infinite, the self lasts forever. So people in extreme situations often feel outside their body, looking, witnessing. You become oddly removed from the calamity of the moment. Then it goes on to psychopaths don't seem to feel fear. Doesn't this mean fear is healthy? If you don't feel fear, you're a psychopath. Well, I'm not a psychopath. I don't feel fear. People with psychopathy experience chronic distress. They're not free of painful feelings. Chronic distress. The unsafe behavior that they sometimes display is a desperate attempt to alleviate, alleviate their anhendio, which is an ahendio, anhendio, intense discomfort. Just intense discomfort. Their thinking tends to be complex and grandiose. Has anyone actually eliminated fear? Well, I'm sitting here as a saying yes. And this is yes. When Buddhist monks are exposed to frightening stimuli, in a controlled labyrinth condition, their heart rates increase to facilitate rigorous activity, but they don't experience an increased galvanic skin response or psychological fear. So science validates what I've been saying to this point. Okay? Not that we needed any, but indeed, it's reassuring to. And again, I'm talking today because I definitely wanted to address this idea of fear. When I saw someone who said that fear is a constant, we always feel fear. We're always fearful, but it's the way that we respond to fear, from equanimity. Just like it's something similar to anger or intense emotions or disappointment. All these things we feel as an enlightened being. So I have on my screensaver on my computer something that I like. It's called Zen Things. And number 1, do one thing at a time. Number 2, do it slowly and deliberately. Number 3, do it completely. Number 4, I really like, do less. Number 5, put space between things. Put space between things. Develop rituals. Designate time for certain things. Devote time to sitting. Sitting is Zen for meditating. Devote time to sitting. Number 9, smile and serve others. 10, which is I practice every day. Make cleaning and cooking become meditation. Number 11, I like, because they talk about not thinking, and my mind, I'm always thinking, but this is part of my Zen practice. Think about what is necessary. What do I have to do today to sustain my body, soul, spirit relationship with myself, my partner, the world around me? Let's think about what is necessary. And the last one that I have heavily endorsed is live simply. So those are my 12 Zen things that I live by every day. Since I'm at this point of just wrapping things up, I want to repeat my mantra again, my daily mantra that I say as I sleep and as I awaken every day. I am a better man today than I was yesterday. I will be a better man today See, this is my mantra, but let's start over. I am a better man today than I was yesterday. And I will be a better man tomorrow than I am today. I am a better man today than I was yesterday. And I will be a better man tomorrow than I am today. So I add this to my 12 things. And you'd think if I repeated it twice a day, I'd get it straight. But sometimes I don't say it out loud, and sometimes I... it's really interesting while I'm at this point is that near the end, I started off with wanting each sharing to be as good as it could be, like perfect, but as close as perfect as I could get. But it's really funny, the last 10 or so, I've really relaxed. I think that's generally so of my life. It has to do with completion, the Trikaya, the third Buddha, Sakyamuni, Gautama, Siddhartha. The historical Buddha asked me if he could come into my physical body and reside in me. And of course I was overwhelmed, cried, but blessed. This is a completion of the Trikaya, the three Buddhas. The first Buddha, they all three exist in the physical body, but the Buddha that you see is the Buddha that becomes the lover. This is the first step of awakening. When you face duality, if you experience your past lives, you reconcile diametrically opposed condition, yin and yang. You've reconciled. You've embraced unity. You've mourned the passing of your ego. You've recognized your ego as illusory and self-created and supported by the outside world. Information coming in, coupled with your own brain, creating this separation, division, this individual that's different. And I've come to learn that we're an individual expression of the infinite. That's for sure. Just as a wave splashes against a rock and the drops come up, that's our individualized form as we on the trajectory back to reuniting with the cosmic mother, the ocean. So that, yes, that individual drop. But water is water. We're composed of the same chemicals as atoms. As I see here, my atoms, my body is accumulation of the cosmos, of information from neutrinos, of timeless energy that has traveled unfathomable distances, is part and parcel of what I am. This is why I know that even bugs have soul. My previous teacher, he would stress that animals, he'd talk about the realms, and really buy into, especially the lower realms. The first 5 or 6 could be eliminated because they put animals in. Eckhart Tolle said it best. I've lived with several Buddhas, and all of them have been cats. Yeah, so many of us disagreed with this idea that animals should be kept away from meditation, that they carry some kind of threat to humanity, when really they're just an example of living in the now. We can learn more from animals, and here we have 2 cats, and I'd like to have a lot more. But even bugs have a soul. So this essence, even rocks have a soul. Because rocks are the same essence that we are. So once you've embraced this, once you've discarded duality, once you've gotten rid of separation and division, once you've seen that you've gotten rid of all your fears, and this is all prefaced with the surrendering, the constant action of surrendering up yourself to the greater wisdom. Celebrating ordinariness. These are all steps of the first bodily awakening. The abiding awakening, the permanent awakening. Non-abiding can be temporary flashes, but abiding and temporary flashes of non-abiding, impermanent awakening, you risk that probably you'll go backwards. There's some elements that separate non-dual, non-permanent, impermanent from the permanent. Awakening. Something work needs to be done, but once you reach the perfect abiding awakened state, there's no going back. It's awakening. It's only going, getting in that spiral, that purple, violet, consuming flame of a spiral, and just going with it. Where you end up, who knows? Who cares? Enjoy the ride. Yeah, that's my best advice to you. Enjoy the ride. Because this is what life is for us in this form, is an opportunity to enjoy the ride. And then the next step, after you go through you go through this bodily, spiritual awakening, which is basically remembering the forgotten. No matter where you go, there you are, and there's nowhere to go. There's no pilgrimages, there's no searching, there's no questions. All these things have left when you enter the first stage of Buddhahood. And then you have to mature as a Buddha, and you're threatened, you become you're enlightened, awakened as an infant Buddha. And you have to discover for yourself how to survive. As you mature, when you get to a certain state, you reach the second stage. It took 2 years in my case, 2 human years, and either 16 or 12, depending on what day it is. Even 16 or 12 years. I believe I settled on 6 Buddha years is every human year. So it took me till I was about 12, 2 Buddha years to mature enough to be able to start sharing the Dharma, the teachings. And, in that period of time, I had to fight my biggest battle. My biggest battles from the time of awakening was probably learning, recognizing, finding, and ultimately destroying the spiritual ego that quickly comes into place upon awakening. One of my first thoughts was, "Wow, I'm special. Look at me. I'm a Buddha now. I did it. Yeah, I'm better than everybody else, or most everybody else. I reached the state of perfection." But we're all in the same state. But we're also in different states of awareness, awakening, asleep. Asleep at the wheel. I remember that old song. So, six years ago, I entered the second stage where living the Dharma. And they say it simply. The lover is the first awakening. You awaken to the love, the compassionate, infinite love. Second is the process of loving. That's the Dharma. You're in a position to start sharing. And sharing means talking if you're so inclined, but basically means living the Dharma. Since the Dharma cannot be put in words, you can only demonstrate by your demeanor, by your vibe, by your being. This is how you teach, by your behaviors, by your fearlessness, by your compassion, through your lack of questions, always appreciating the beauty of ordinariness, embracing your ordinariness, extraordinary ordinariness, and all the while maintaining a constant state of surrendering. So now you're in a position, so took a couple years, human years, but I didn't start sharing until 4 years ago. So, but I've been first Buddha for 8 years. Second Buddha, the process. So I've been the lover for 8 years. The process of loving, sharing the Dharma for 2 years. No. 2 years later, for 6 years, and then 4 years of sharing the Dharma, sharing my teachings, sharing my perspectives, certainly offering nothing new because nothing's new under the sun, but sharing. And then recently in this past July, I entered the third state where Gautama, Siddhartha, asked to enter, the historical Buddha asked to enter me. Then I became the beloved. So the 3 stages of the triad is the lover, the process of loving, and the beloved. So all that you can be aware of on the outside, the last 2 steps, you can start noticing that there's equanimity and noticing if the person is sharing or demonstrating or you feel something special. That's the sharing, the process of loving. But the third state, it's been like a non-stop full blast. And now I've gotten to the place that I want to close this with what my latest, slow the flow.